Adventure in Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
Wake up, America! It's time for the Adventures of Pipe Man on W4CY.com, West Palm Beach's #1 internet radio station. Here's your host, the Pipe Man.
This is the Pipe Man here on the Adventures Pipe Man W4CY Radio, and I'm here with our next guest who has some killer music we want to talk about. So let's welcome to the show, Seb from Tumbleweed Dealer. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I got to tell you, I love your band name. Every time I say it or think it, I'm thinking of my high school weed dealer, actually.
Honestly, I gotta admit, we kind of regret it now. It's you can't search it on Facebook. If you try to look us up on Facebook, Facebook will tell you that it's illegal to purchase narcotics on Facebook.
Oh my God!
We're not going to show up. Yeah, it's been pretty bad for the marketing techniques. We're kind of regretting the name now.
How quickly did it take for you to realize?
It took like 12 years. It was not an issue until we started promoting the new albums. Something must have changed with Meta or whatever. But now it's like you can't look it up. And I'm sure they're killing our views and numbers because of that. It's been really hard to get some traction on Facebook. I think Facebook kind of just picked up on the pun finally after 10 years. Like, wait a minute. I don't think they're dealing out tumbleweeds.
I know, right? Yeah, I think what it is, I'll tell you exactly what it is because I deal with that crap all the time. It's the AI. So the AI is only hearing weed.
That's it. And the AI, I tried to write to Facebook, but how do you convince a machine you're not selling drugs, man?
I know. Maybe you should go a different route and say, hey, it's kind of legal now.
It is. That's the thing. You should let us sell. We probably make a lot more money selling weed than trying to sell music on Facebook. So
I know, right? And you know what? It's kind of ironic is once weed starts turning legal that they're blocking you. That's weird.
Exactly. It was never an issue before, and now all of a sudden we can't pop up on Facebook no more. You can't be buying no tumbleweeds.
Maybe they were just listening to how great your music is, and they're thinking, "Oh yeah, this is definitely,
Yeah, they're clearly under the influence. We're gonna have to put a stop on that. Yeah.
See now, where are you located?
Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
That's what I thought, but I didn't want to assume. And I love Montreal, but maybe. You'll have some luck in the U.S. in places like Oklahoma where they actually think you'll be actually selling tumbleweeds because
but they're probably the first ones to wonder why the hell would anyone buy them? They just roll around everywhere for free. Why the hell would someone start dealing them? Why would I buy one? There's a bunch in my backyard. So there are lots of people that would buy. An Eskimo would buy a tumbleweed way before someone in Oklahoma would.
I know, and I just thought of something funny. If I'm remembering correctly, in the Doors movie, when he's tripping out on peyote or whatever, and I think there's like tumbleweeds going by him.
Probably. I remember in the SpongeBob movie where Keanu Reeves' head is a tumbleweed that gives him godlike advice, which was pretty fucking trippy too for a kid's movie.
That would be great to kind of use that if you could in like one of your videos.
Yeah, we're trying to get away from the whole stoner thing, to be honest. I said we're under the influence. I actually have been pretty stone cold sober for the last 8 years or so.
Good
so we're kind of moving away from the whole stoner thing. We lean into it really hard at the beginning with the band name and the song titles, and it was definitely a big factor in how we were making music at that point. You get a kid, you grow up, and you start learning how to write sober.
Exactly. Like, so, and to me too, it's funny because I'm not even in that same mode anymore like you. And I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, it's just Tumbleweed Dealer. I didn't even think anything of it. I just thought, hey, they were sitting around and came up with a cool name.
Yeah, pretty much. We just wanted to get something that showed we're going for the whole psychedelic stoners thing on one side, and on the other side, we're going for a Western Morricone spaghetti Western kind of vibe. Like,
I love
so
it.
we just wanted to be really on the nose with our two main influences, but the sound kind of grew since then. So the name doesn't represent it all anymore.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the newest music, the newest album. How would you, as the artist, describe it, and how would you describe it differently from previous?
It's I don't even want to say it's the next evolution when you compare it to the third album, because I think it's like 5 or 6 steps further. At first, I was trying to release albums almost yearly. I managed to with the first 2 albums, then big delay, third album. Then I had a kid, 8 years, fourth album. So if I was still on that initial schedule, this would be like my 12th or 13th or 14th album. And I feel like music wise, it's like it's evolved that much. There's a big gap. Those 8 years really let us explore music as fans,
Yeah.
discover kind of musics that we like, and find ways to bring it back into the Tumbleweed Dealer sound. So where it started was very strict, like 2 sounds together. Like we're putting stoner rock with Western vibes, a bit of post rock in there. That's it. It kept growing and growing. And between the third album that had like a couple of genres mixed in there, and this one's a lot wider. I think it's like we incubated the band's sound, and we managed to get like the third or fourth evolution and skip a few levels.
Nice. And I find that like the song Ghost Dressed in Weeds, that to me that describes what you're talking about. It's like it's got a really cool, unique sound to it. And that's something I love nowadays because it seems like with technology and AI and all that, like all music's starting to sound the same. And, I used to hate it when the older people said that when I was younger because it wasn't true, but now it's true.
It is, and it is, but it isn't, in the sense that there's so much music out there, and we'll oftentimes shit on technology and say like, oh, well, with the technology and with Spotify, and definitely like before I say anything good about Spotify, let's start with fuck Spotify. They're fucking me over. I'm not making goddamn fucking dime. Fuck them. But as a listener, fucking love Spotify. I'm discovering so many different genres and music that I never even thought of looking into because it's at my fingertips. Because of that, I don't understand why we're like the bands are their sound are getting like this when their
Right.
access to all the music in the world is going like this. So
Right.
why would you write something like I always say, like, if you listen to your favorite band, pick up your guitar and go like, I want to sound like my favorite band. Well, do it in your living room. No one needs to hear it, man. You're not adding anything to music. Like, you don't need, and everyone's music is valid, and if you want to do it, you want to do it. But I don't get it. I don't get it. I would never have one band and go like, I want to sound like them. No, I want to sound like them, mix with them, but the bass is doing this and this is doing that. A slight this on this, and that's for one song. Next song, this is the mix. And that's always been how I approach music. I want to make something that's unique, but I don't want to make weird for the sake of weird. I just want to have my own flavor and my own like recipe, but I'm not trying to feed you guys mud and call it food.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, see, to me, a great artist is about experimenting with your creativity, and I find a lot of artists nowadays aren't experimenting. They're pushing buttons or they're copying somebody else. So that's why I like somebody like you that's like making real music, and that real music doesn't have to have a distinctive sound. It has to have the sound that's authentic to you.
Yeah, and I think you can have a color palette
Yeah.
And then you can paint different stuff with your color palette, where I still think every song has a little tumbleweed in it. There's always that little twang, that little southern side. It's just we recontextualize it by going like, look, the guitars are still doing the twang, but the bass is playing jazz and the drum is playing a samba. But to me, tumbleweed is a type of melody and a vibe. It's not a genre, meaning I can play shoegaze and it's tumbleweed. I can play jazz and it's tumbleweed. It's not where other bands are like, well, we are brutal death metal. So, like, yes, we can have a bit of this kind of influence, but it's still brutal. Tumbleweed's not a genre. It's a vibe and it's a kind of melody. You can put that melody over anything. It took me a few albums to realize that I can still have that westerny twang, but I can have the bass play a funky bass line and the drums have like this completely different thing. And that's where I like the layer stuff. I like the layer stuff. And people go, I don't really hear this influence in your music. I'm like, it's because it's just in the bass. If you're listening to the whole thing, like a lot of people say, oh, it reminds me of krautrock. Krautrock's my least favorite kind of progressive rock. I don't really like krautrock. It's just people associate prog plus funk, krautrock. But no, it's prog and the guitars and the keys and the bass and the drum are funking. To me, it's two things together. It's not krautrock. I'm not listening to Can. I'm listening to King Crimson, and then I'm turning around and listening to James Brown and Thundercat and stuff like that, and I'm layering them, and that's where I'm getting a funky progressive rock.
I love that because, too, you made a point, too, is one of my things nowadays is the genre thing. I can't stand it. Like, it gets so ridiculous. I do this thing. I go on tour and I do radio coverage at music festivals, and I do this thing during interviews is like, we just do it as a joke. Like, if you were to come up with your own genre for your band, what would that genre be called? And the reason I do that is to show the ridiculousness of how micro genres and subgenres, and it's like they get so specific, and that locks the artist in to that specific.
It does, but at the same time, I kind of get it because right now we're living you're like, why does everyone do it that way? We're going to do it our own fucking way. And then you're like, oh, this is why they do it that way. Where we're in this weird niche right now where like, oh, well, it's very proggy. There's Mellotron. There's a lot of the 70s vibe. But the old prog heads are going to hate it because there's a guy rapping over one song. The rap people are going to hate it because there's too much music. Like, it's hard to find an audience right now. We're getting like that. Oh, that's why they go for one specific. Now we kind of get it because it's hard to market it afterwards. We will try go like, oh, I think we got enough math rock. Let's talk to some math rock people. They're like, most of the albums in 4/4. I'm like, it's still math rock. There's more than that than just time signatures. And then the prog heads are like, oh, I really didn't like that one song. I'm like, oh, the one with the guy rapping. Let me guess, it's the guy with the one rapping, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So we're really in this in between where it's hard to find an audience. Like, this is why people pick, I'm going to play melodic folk Viking metal. And because you have a pre-made audience when you do that. It's honestly a lot smarter than whatever the fuck we're trying to do right now. But hey, it's what we want to do.
So we could call you, Western rap, is Western psychedelic tumbleweed rap.
So you gotta throw funk and prog somewhere in there. So we're
I was gonna throw
funky. The main two ingredients with the new album, on top of what we had already built, was we were trying to take what we already had and really then merge. I love 70s prog rock. I'm a huge fan of Camel, which is not super unknown, but it's not like in the big top three. It's not Emerson, Lake and Palmer and King Crimson and Yes and stuff. Camel's my favorite band ever, especially the first 5 albums. I wanted those sounds. So I wanted like the Mellotron. I wanted a Hammond organ and stuff, but we didn't want to play 70s stuff. We didn't want to sound retro. So we wanted to take that, recontextualize it into something a bit more upbeat, but odd. We were very inspired by Japanese math rock on that side. Bands like Toe, bands especially light taste, stuff like that, and really big fans of those Japanese bands. And we're trying to mix that together, like kind of like I was saying, put the sounds of the keyboards and 70s on top, and the rhythm sections getting this whole Japanese mat rock thing. And that was like the main recipe. And then let's see in what direction we can push that main recipe. So basically, camel and toe. We're trying to make a camel toe.
I love it. I love it. And so here's a question I like to know is how is it that Canadian musicians can form a band with not many people and make such incredible music and such a full sound that like you could have bands here in the US that have 10 members that can't create as much of a sound, so to speak.
I don't know if it's a Canadian thing. For us personally, we just hired a bunch of session musicians. We just took off all of the limitations on our music. When we started to write on the album, at some point we made a decision that we were not interested in playing live anymore. So we didn't need to be able to recreate this on stage, where before we would play shows, which means I would write the guitars. Yes, there'd be 12 guitars, but they would happen one at a time, and I could do it with a looper. So we were getting on stage, and I was recording myself through a looper, and I was going guitar number one, guitar number two, and building it up. But that dictated the song structure, and we were like, "Fuck it, I don't feel like playing shows anymore. I don't care. Let's not like write the songs to play like 3 shows and that's it." So we could go 4 guitars, then 2, then 1, and that kind of opened like that whole fuck the shows mentality opened the door to like, well, if we're not playing shows, I've always wanted to have Mellotron on my music. I'm like, let's reach out to someone. We found the guy that has a Mellotron in Quebec. Like, okay, we'll send him to. I also very much like in love with the sound of a Hammond organ. Oh, he has one too. Find a guy with a Rhodes piano. And the only thing linking all the instruments that we used is that I love them. That's the only, like, you're like, we have got horns, we've got saxophone, we've got flugelhorn, there's Rhodes, there's like, and you're like, okay, how did they all fit together? They all fit together because I all love them. If I all love them, they can all go together. What the fuck? That's it. That's the logic. And then I was like, well, I've always wanted to do one song with a vocalist because everything else is instrumental. And I was like, Chesky Ramos. And the guys were like, is that a singer? Is he like in a stoner band? I'm like, no, he's like an indie rapper that sings. And they're like, how does that fit? It fits because I love his music. That's it. If I want it to fit, I'll make it fit. And that's it. And we just kind of went all in into what we love. And we're all metalheads. We all come from metal bands. So, like, at one point, I'm like, double bass drums. He's like, what? Double bass drums. We've never done it before. We're doing it now. In the middle of a goddamn song, double bass drums. Go full in. And so it was just that fun. Like, we don't care anymore, man. We're just going to put everything we love together. And then we're just going to work and work and work until for us it fits. And for some people, it doesn't fit. They'll be like, well, this doesn't go with it. I'm like, it does, motherfucker. It does. You just can't understand it.
And you know what? I love that because to me, that's a true musician. It's like when I started playing guitar, and I still ended up sucking, but my dad, I would be sitting there and I would just experiment with what I could do on the guitar. I wasn't like playing anything structured. I wanted to hear what sounds I could make. And he's like, you better give that up because you suck. And he didn't get it though. I wasn't trying to sound good. I was trying to see what I liked. And to me, how can you be a great musician if you don't love it?
Well, and that's I think the difference is being a great musician, which I do not think I am, especially not as a guitarist. As a bassist, I'm pretty good. As a guitarist, I'm a bassist that plays guitar. I'm not a guitarist. But the difference is I don't want to be a great musician. I want to be a great composer. And that's a switch that happened in my brain when I started this project. And that's why I picked up a guitar because I was like, I don't want to have someone else's input. I want to write the guitar riffs myself. I'm a bass player, but I was just so sick of having to find a guitar player and then adapt to his sound and then try to tweak it. I'm like, no, I'll make my own goddamn sound. I can play guitar good enough but give me a guitar and ask me to play a Slayer riff, and that's when you're going to see I am not a guitarist. I'm a bassist that picked up. I practice the techniques I needed for my songs. I can play my songs. I can play these little tappy things. They're like, oh, that's pretty complicated. Play Angel of Death. I'm like, that. I've never practiced picking like that. There's no picking like that in my music, so I don't need it. But I can't play a Metallica riff, and I can't palm mute to save my life. Like, I'm not a guitar player. I'm not a good one. That's for goddamn sure. I aim to be a good composer.
I love
first, and a good bassist second, and that's why the bass is a big emphasis in our music. And I also try to be a good bass writer, a good bass. I went from being like, I'm gonna outplay everyone on the bass, I'm gonna shred so much, and now I'm like, no, I'm gonna play a 4-note line that's gonna get stuck in your head and drive you absolutely fucking insane because you can't get it out of your head. That's my goal now. It's not to impress you with my skills. It's for you to hate me in 2 hours when you're still humming that bass line driving to work.
Right?
Yeah, and that's my goal now. So
I
that's
love
the difference. Some people want to be great musicians. I don't. I want to try to write good music, and that's it. Like, I really couldn't care more about being good on the instrument anymore. I'm good enough to write what I need to write. That's it. I plateaued on my instrument 20 years ago.
Well, you know what's interesting about what you just said is I think of like some shredders, and I think they're not really great musicians, even though people think they are. They're shredding so it sounds like they're great musicians.
There's some merit to it. It's a different art. It's a different. They're aiming for a different goal, and if that's your goal, it's valid. And I still do watch some shredders and go like, "Holy shit, the technique!" But I probably won't listen to that in my car a lot. I'll bump something a lot more fun to listen to. But on YouTube, it's fun. There's a lot of musicians like that. I find like they're a fun musician to look at, but without the visual aspect, I wouldn't really like play it in my car. I'll put something a lot catchier on. But it's just a different goal.
Gwar. Like Gwar.
Yeah, I'm not that huge fan of Gwar, but yeah, anything like that. And I was listening to Napalm Dead on the way home, so I skip from genre to genre. I get bored really quick. I'm like one grindcore, one rap, one prog album. That's it, and I go around. But yeah,
I think that's what's beautiful. I think that's what's beautiful about bands that create different kinds of music. Like I was just talking about an interview recently that everybody keeps giving a lot of shade to Bring Me to Horizon for doing all this different stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, I think Ollie's probably bored and wants to write whatever he feels in his head. And he even said it in an interview, why do I want to write the same song over and over again?
Then there's nothing worse to me than listening to a band's new album, and when it's over, all I can think of is it's more of the same. Yeah. Like, even if you write your best songs ever, if they're more of the same on album number 4, that's more of the same, I'm not going to enjoy it as much as I did on the first one when it was new to me. So from my perspective, your new album's not as good as your old one, because your old one I spent more time with, and your new one I'll just go like it's more the same. Yeah, but the songs are better. Yeah, but it's more the same, so I'm not going to listen to them that much, and then I'm going to go back to the other album that I know better, that has a bit of nostalgia attached to. So you're just not going to pique my interest and putting the time into really appreciating the songs, because they're not bringing anything new to the table. If I finish an album, it's like, oh, it's more of the same. I'm not going to listen to it 12 times to appreciate the intricacies of the little nuances that make them not. They sound like their first album, and I already like your first album, so it makes people, a lot of times I'll finish an album and go like, it's not bad, made me want to go back to the first one. That's not what you want from a new album, to make me want to go back and listen to the ones from before. No, you want me hooked on the new one. You want me to go like, this one has something special. That's why I love a band like Ulver. I always say we're the Ulver of stoner rock.
Well, you know, it's funny too that you mentioned that, because I immediately thought of one of my favorite bands, who my favorite album of theirs is their first album, and they came out with a new album not that long ago. And at first, when it first came out, I'm like, oh, this is badass. It's going back to old school. But then I got bored, because it didn't have, like you're saying, it didn't have that same raw feeling that it did first time around. It just sounded
And
like, you know,
it's not necessarily that the albums, it might be better than the first one, but music does not exist in a vacuum. Your
yeah.
new album exists for a lot of people, maybe not the new fans. For a lot of people, though, it exists in reference to the album before. Especially to me, if you put out a few good albums, I'm waiting for the next evolution. I'm waiting for the next step. You give me more of the same, I'm probably going to go back to the album before because I know it better and I appreciate it more. And I'm not going to give your new one the time to sit with me as much because it's not offering anything new. So if you want to keep me hooked, you don't have to make these big leaps and bounds, but you have to give me a little something. You have to go in one specific direction. And
Yeah.
a lot of times I find it comes from musicians that love music and that love music outside of what they make. Like I was reading an interview with Ackerfeld from Opeth recently, and he was talking about his Still Life album. And album that I love, absolutely love Still Life. I love Opeth, especially the early stuff. And he mentioned that people don't realize that, but when they made that album, they were obsessed with Stevie Wonder. And to him, it and he makes, and it's like it's this one like part of my life where for like a year or two I was obsessed with Stevie Wonder, and then we made this album. And for him, it's like and you don't hear Stevie Wonder in there, but it influenced him somehow. And that album has a little special something, and it's because it represents that one period in his life when he was musically obsessed with this one thing. It's not a direct influence, but it's there.
Yeah, you know what's wild about that made me remember about an interview Dave Grohl did talking about Nirvana, and he was saying, you know, people don't know this, but that drum beat in Nirvana, I stole that from disco. That was a disco drum beat.
I saw that, and then
right?
and they showed the comparison. Yeah, like he just brought in this new context. It has this effect that's similar but different. Like it still has like it drives the song the same way as the disco song does. The way you like the clack, the clack, the clack, the clack, it gets you pumping right into it. But instead of dancing, you're shooting up heroin. Like it brings it in there. Like it has the same purpose, but for a different reason. And I love stuff like that. And a lot of times that's all I'm doing. I'm not stealing specific parts, but feel like, oh, this is a weird part. I'm like, oh, it's just like this proggy thing, but underneath, like I'm playing a shoegazy kind of thing. And that's all it is. It's just two layers. And we always approach the music like that, where to me, the rhythm section and the guitars are two different things. Yeah. The rhythm section has the gel, it's the beat, it's something. And that's something as a bassist I hate in most rock and metal music is that the bass, because you have a rhythm guitar, and because you have a rhythm guitar, the bass is kind of useless because there's a rhythm guitar. Music should be a drum and a bass locked together and then lead instruments floating over it. But you can't do that when you're playing death metal because all the guitarists are playing rhythm. So what's the bass going to do? Well, he's going to do the exact same thing as the guitar player, or he's going to throw in a bunch of fills. But you can't really start grooving when everyone's blast beating and drilling 30 seconds. So there's no room for that classic structure in that genre. And that's why I go towards these kinds of genre. I want that classic structure. I want the bass to lock in with the drums, and I want everything else to float over it. And that's why I can be like, oh, I wrote this little tappy math rock kind of riff. What do we do under it? And then me and the drummer we could write 12 different songs to go underneath that same riff because we could go in so many directions. And I finally found like a drummer that really he Bojack. I hate everything, and I'm sitting, and he's just excited about everything. So I'm like, oh, I've got this little riff. It's like, wow, it's so good. We could do this. We could do that. I'm like, I don't know. Like this good. And I'm like, I've got this one bass line. I'm not sure it works. It's fucking amazing, man. Work on it. Doing like super motivated, loves everything. So like any idea I throw out there is like, yeah, and we could do this and that, and it builds on there. But like on a different day, we would write a completely different song with the same guitars, but the drum and the bass would go in a different direction.
Wow.
So that's what I love. It's like the song could be anything, until we put a rhythm to it. The guitars are just kind of floating there, like all other than respecting the tempo. And we can go half, we can go the same. So if the guitars are at 80, we can play at 160, we can play at 40. Like, we just have to have a tempo that respects it. That's it. But we can bring it in so many different directions. And that's where, like, I'll write a song on guitar and then go like, okay, so what do we do with the rhythms? And then it becomes a completely different song. So it's like two versions of me wrote two different songs and layered them.
Wow. Now, that made me think of something, okay? Because, I think of when Jason Newsted was in Metallica, and basically he said himself he used to follow James. Like, he used to play with James instead of with Lars. And what you just said, and it makes sense to me because I played drums for 9 years before I went to guitar. And to me, drums and bass always go together, and they're the foundation of the song. And so it's interesting that you said that too. And that makes me wonder, all this talk about how they had in Justice for All, they took out the bass down to very low.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering if that's because of Lars' insecurity or if it's because of what you're saying, that, you didn't really need the bass because you had Hetfield playing and he was following Hetfield.
Yeah, plus when you've got one of the best rhythm guitar players in the world, because that's what Hetfield was with all that down pick, and dude was like on another level, like he's playing all the rhythms. What are you going to do as a bass player? Plus, Lars isn't giving you much with his basic beats. It's not like there's a lot to sink your teeth into, and it's always something I felt when I played bass in death metal bands, where I'm like, you're blast beating or you're rolling your bass drums. I'm like, you're not giving me anything syncopated to sink my teeth in as a bass player. So a lot of times I would feel like I'm playing guitar on my bass because there's no way to play bass.
Wow.
Like, I can't start throwing in little octave lines and stuff for blast beating. I have to pick. That's just the guitar pick.
So I have a trivia question for you then that made me think of. Do you know who one of the most famous bass players was that was not a bass player? He was just a bass player because the band already had two guitarists.
I feel like I've heard this one, but it's not. Is it Rush? Is it Geddy Lee?
No. But you're right.
No,
it's something
I
you
feel
wouldn't
like I've
think.
heard
You're right.
this, but
It's
like I
something you
can't
wouldn't
remember.
think. You wouldn't think ever. And
Yeah.
because he was a guitar player first, he's considered one of the best bassists ever. But people don't really know that, which is what's weird. It's Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney.
Oh, yeah, right. That, yeah.
He drew the short straw, man. Like George and John were already guitarists. He was a guitarist. So it's like, okay, I'll play bass.
Honestly, I would like to say that bass called to me or something. That's how I ended up playing bass too. We were three friends. We were all like 11 and 12, and we wanted to start a band. And I was just like, they were better than me. So they were like, Christmas is coming up. You're not that good. How about you ask for a bass? It's simpler to play. And then I got a bass for Christmas, and I kind of ditched those guys. I went like, oh, I like this a lot better than guitar. And then I started putting in the hours and practicing and learning my instrument, but I didn't pick it. Like, they picked it for me. They're like, yeah, you're the third one. We're a lot better. You should pick up the bass. It's going to be easier for you. And that's how I ended up on the bass. So
And here
I'd
you
love
are.
to say that it called to me, but nope, I ended up on that instrument by accident or by default because I wasn't that good on the guitar.
Well, see, there you go. Everything happens for a reason. Here you are with Tumbleweed Dealer, not to be found on Facebook. And so tell everybody how they can reach out to you on socials, on the web, get the new album, the newest album, and anything else you want them to check out.
If you guys want to get the new album, it's on Bandcamp. Bandcamp's always our preferred platform of choice because Bandcamp actually pays their artists. So if you guys want to buy digital media, go on Bandcamp. Most of the money goes to us. That's like direct support. If you want to go on Spotify, we are on Spotify. You have to. It's not a choice we enjoy, but we are on there because I mean, at the same time, I understand it. It's the most convenient platform, and we don't make music to make money, or else we wouldn't make music that's this weird. So we make it for you guys to listen to. So we did put it on Spotify. That way you can play it on the car. That's Follow us on Facebook if you can find us. Good luck. If not, we're on Instagram. I'm even trying this whole TikTok thing. Can't say I haven't tried everything to get my music out there.
There you go. Well, TikTok actually, man, the algorithm for musicians is absolutely incredible. I know some groups and musicians that, I mean, because of TikTok, they're playing like the major festivals and they're like huge before they even went out and played a show.
I really like the duet function on TikTok. I haven't done any, but I watch a lot of them because sometimes you end up with stuff you would have never thought. And like they're creating new genres. Like one guy was playing the handpan. You know, it's this kind of steel drum that you play. I love handpan music. It's good to relax to. And he's explaining, like, oh, well, people say, like, what's the kind of stuff that's hard to play on the handpan? It's not this kind of stuff. It's this kind of stuff. But then all these other musicians added their part. So when he goes, it's this kind of stuff. Well, you have a bassist, you have a dude rapping, you have a drum. Like 7 people added their instruments on top of it. And now it's this weird, shreddy handpan funk rap thing. And you're like, it lasts 30 seconds, but I want a full album of that kind of music. I'll never get it. I stay awake at night going, like, I want that. It's a 30-second of music that will never be recreated. That it's a genre that existed through one random TikTok combination of 7 musicians that
cool.
Did not know what the other ones were going to do. Like the bass player didn't know the guy was going to rap. The guy rapping didn't know that. So it's like you can't recreate that. It's like a weird that side of TikTok I really enjoy. It's when people add like they're adding music to like someone's falling down the stairs going, what the fuck? Ow, ow, and guy adds like a little Seinfeld like slap bass. What the fuck? Ow, 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 ow. Like I love stuff like that. That's my kind. I like musical humor too. Little shit like that makes me laugh. So TikTok's fun for that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you know, you mentioned the duet thing, and there's one band that really worked for because the lead singer of the band kind of had the similar look, similar sound, similar actions as Jack Black. And so they kept calling out Jack Black on TikTok, and he duetted with them.
He did it?
He duetted with them. They went up to like 1 million followers, and, you know, and it was like so cool, you know. And would that have ever happened in the 80s? No.
No, and it's one thing like we always like shit on the technology, shit on like, oh, well, these new TikTok music. Yeah, but at the same time, we're getting shit we could have never gotten before. Like, what one video I watched recently was a guy took the song "Girls Want to Have Fun," like from "Just Want to Have Fun" from Cyndi Lauper, and he made it minor key, and then he made like a sad song out of it.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is genius. Like, you wouldn't get this any time before. Like, we needed to get to this point in human evolution to have a guy go take a song from the 80s, put it in a minor key, then put it on YouTube as a sad ballad. And it fucking works, man. It fucking works. And like, you wouldn't think it works, but it works. And so I love shit like that. Like, there's a good side to this whole technology thing. There's a good side to this whole ADHD media consumption thing where like, okay, yes, people are not buying full albums as much, but we are getting some really fucked up like 30-second videos of shit we could never imagine before. Like and you got to kind of follow it. Like you said, you can't be that old guy. It was like, it was better back in my, it was better for musicians for sure because people were actually buying shit. But as a music fan, like I'm really curious to see where all of this is going, and I'm really into like electronic music for that reason, like kind of shit where like I could take music that's being made now, and if I played it for someone and like I went back in time in 1950 and I played it for someone that was listening to Beach Boys, I'm like, oh, like the Beach Boys, check this out, it's called Venetian Snares. They would literally fucking die. They would
Right.
fucking die from listening to one song of Venetian Snare. Their brain would not comprehend anything going on, and they would literally fucking die right there from one song of Venetian Snares, because you can't even fathom. So now I'm like, what the fuck's gonna music sound like in 2050? I
I
hope I
know,
make
right?
it to 2050 just so I can be like, oh, I would have never seen this shit coming. And then I try to think, like, what the fuck are they going to do? Like, old shit's coming back, new shit's coming. Like, they're going to play bagpipes over fart sounds and it's going to sound great. I don't know. Like, no idea where it's going to go. But, like, it is fun to watch that evolution. And yes, like the new technology and the shorter video. Sometimes I have a lot of musicians I love, and I'm like, just release a fucking album. Release a fucking album. You're really fucking good, but these 30-second videos are killing me. Release a fucking album, for fuck's sake. And like, it's annoying, but at the same time, it's like some of them are better geared for videos. They're better geared to have a visual attached to it. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan of this one guy called Max Ostro. You ever heard of Max Ostro?
No, I'll have to check that out.
Look him up on YouTube. He plays fusion guitar. He's a Russian kid. Like, first of all, you need to see him play because the fingers and the stuff, but also just he's probably not 18 anymore, but he was 18 at the beginning. Looked like he was 12. He is Russian. He's got big 80s glasses and a curly mullet. And just the whole thing, and he just makes these faces, like he'll do these jazz legs, like and he looks like the camera going, and just the visual fits with everything. Like, he's just like the ultimate 80s geek, but he looks like Screech, but in the 80s on coke, and he's playing like Alan Holdsworth. And it all works together. And I'm like, yes, I want him to play in a band and release a goddamn normal album, but no, instead he's making instructional videos, and he's never released an actual goddamn song. He just releases little licks and little videos, and then he peddles his DVD.
Wow.
But at the same time, it's the perfect medium for him. You have to see this dude play and appreciate, and just the weird techniques he does to get those sounds, like to get to see it makes that you appreciate it even more. So it kind of works. And yes, I would want people to start buying albums again because I like to make albums and I like to listen to albums, but it's also interesting to see where it's all going right now.
Well, one thing I really do love, to your point about the technology nowadays, is it gave artists more control and took it away from the record labels.
A lot of people will say, well, nowadays anyone can record. Good. Why are
Exactly.
why are you gatekeeping? Like, I want as many people. Yes, we end up with a lot of shitty fucking bands, but I mean, the percentage of good bands is the same. There's just more music, so we get more good music. Ignore the shitty. There's enough good music out there. You can ignore the shitty music and take the good, and you don't have to bitch about, well, people can record in their bedrooms now. Yes, that's a good thing. Now, all the good musicians will get out there instead of just the ones that are cherry-picked by record labels and radio stations and shit.
Exactly.
And now it's all on the internet, and we can all go listen to whatever we find best and not what they're feeding on the radio. There's nothing bad about that. There's nothing bad about people being able to record on a decent budget.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other thing that I think is great about technology
more
is
music's always a good thing.
It gets rid of the gatekeepers. Like, you think about back in our time, you could only like this kind of music, and like we were talking about and stuff like that. Whereas I think technology nowadays allows us to be able to enjoy multiple genres because it's just normal.
It's just normal, and it's at your fingertips. So why wouldn't you? Before, like, I would tape trade death metal bands in the 90s because, like, I remember you couldn't even download an MP3. It was a real audio. It took 4 hours and it sounded like shit once you got it. We would tape trade on the internet, and then I'd look up someone's list. I'm like, oh, I'll send you these 5 albums. You send me these 5. And then he'd add like a bonus album for fun because it's this obscure. And that's like, and I get to say fun shit. And like, it's an asshole thing to do, but I get to say fun shit like, oh, Opeth, you're into Opeth? I actually got into them when they released their first album, like, because I was tape trading and people were sending me random shit. And I actually did discover Opeth when they just released Orchid. And I was like 15.
Wow.
in Canada listening to the Swedish band that no one knew. And like a couple albums later, they blew up. And same thing with Catatonia. I was into them first album because I was tape trading and shit. But it was hard. I couldn't really get out until I'm gonna get into jazz and tape trade jazz. No, I had to buy tapes and ship them across the world. It was super fucking complicated. Now I feel like, I wonder if I like jazz. You just write jazz in YouTube and you listen, and that's it. It wasn't that fucking simple for us back then. So it's like, it's normal now because you have access to it, and you'd have to be just like plain dumb to go like, no, I'm just gonna listen to this one genre and that's it because that's what I like. And I really dislike people like that where they make their whole person, because it's not about the music, it's about the scene. It's their whole personality. It's like, I'm a punk. I listen to punk music. I hang out with punk people. And then they're like, because we're free spirits. That like you only listen to people, the music that sounds exactly the same, and only hang out with people that think the exact same thing as you and listen to the same bands. Super open-minded to it. No, I'm gonna hang out with the guy that listens to everything. And I think it's fun.
I'm the long hair.
You know.
I'm the long hair in the 80s that wasn't allowed to go to punk shows, but I could go to a Slayer show, no problem. Yet it was so similar and it was just stupid, like I had that happen recently. I was actually, a couple of years ago, I was dating the singer of a hardcore punk band, and she had that old school punk thought process. Like, she was very anti-metal, and punk's the only true blah 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 blah, the bullshit. And it's like, in 2000s, that's just stupid. It's just stupid.
When you've got so much stuff just there waiting for you to check it out. And I think it's fun because you see a lot of younger people getting into different music. So, and I like to discover different music. I've been getting really into, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm discovering this kind of music. I'm like, I'm expanding I'm into different stuff. But then when you start going into like pages and Reddits about it, like you're like, I'm so far behind. Like I just got into Aphex Twin last week. Like I'm super behind on that, but I'm getting into IDM and Aphex Twin and like Utish and stuff like that. And then I'm looking it up, but on Reddit, like people now are super I'm getting into this band and this band. What else should I like? No one's gatekeeping. Everyone's being cool. And then you can see people like, oh, I'm 16 and I just heard Aphex Twin. I'm like, well, I'm 44 and I just heard Aphex Twin, and I'm gonna get into different. And like you see these kids getting in, like they're discovering this niche genre from 2000, or like they're getting into prog from the 70s, and it's fun because it's stuff I didn't branch out into until I was a lot older, because it wasn't at my fingertips as it is now. And
think about it too, when we were younger, especially me, because I'm 58, and basically talking about genres, you had to spend your very hard-earned money on an album. You weren't going to pick an album that was outside your genre because you didn't want to not like it and waste your money. So
yeah, exactly. That's why we got micro. I remember I would not listen in the mid 90s. I would not listen to a band if it wasn't from Gothenburg, Sweden. In 95, all the good bands were from. I would go to my local metal record shop and tell him, what do you have from Gothenburg, Sweden? And then he'd get me a CD, and it would be an import for like $45 or something. And then he'd play it in the store, and I'd be like, it sounds exactly like the other bands that I like from Gothenburg, Sweden. And I wanted to visit Gothenburg, Sweden. And apparently it's just this little rural town that has nothing special but Dark Tranquility, At the Gates, and the Flames. They were all from that one town. And I was obsessed with bands from there. And I would pay like so much to get these CDs imported from there, because I was like, I zeroed in into my sound. I'm like, at $45, I ain't gonna try a band from England that I've never heard.
Right.
So like, I would get a lot of stuff on tape trading and stuff, but yeah, before I'd spend my money, I would have to make sure it's really up my alley. I really got into buying used CDs. That's where I started maybe getting more. Even used vinyls. That's how old I was. Now vinyls are super expensive, but I was there when they were $1 each in pawn shops.
Oh, I have my vinyl collection right next to me, and sometimes I just rifle through and look, and I still have the sticker on the album because it was a used album. and it says like $199, $299. And I'm like, man, I remember that. I thought it was such a deal. I didn't give a shit what it sounded like because it was only $2.
You see, that's why. If you wanted to find music, you found a way, but it was harder back then. When I got into Prague, I would go to these pawn shops, and it was at the end of like all these vinyl from like the 70s. They were all breaking down and shit, so they were $1 each, but they would scratch like hell. But still, I would walk into I could walk out with 50, 60 new albums for less than a day's worth of work. And I was slinging hot dogs for $8 an hour, but still, I was getting 50, 60 albums at the end of the day at the pawn shop, which was pretty good. So that's where I took my chances, and that's where I got into different kind of stuff. Love
it. Well, man, your music is badass, and everybody definitely has to check it out and get it. And by the way, it's funny you've mentioned Gothenburg because I've played hockey on a Bondi field in Gothenburg.
Awesome. I've never actually been. I've been to Europe, but I didn't get to go to any Scandinavian country, so I didn't get to see Gothenburg. I didn't get to see the Oslo in Norway or any of the legendary places from all the bands that I was obsessed with when I was a kid.
Yeah, right. And it was like there were some really from Gothenburg, from Norway, from Finland. These bands that just like I think about it, I'm like, it must be because they have 6 months of darkness that they can create this music like that. Because you got nothing else to do but make music. Else to
do, the beer. I think they're. I remember reading that they're just the governments and the people were kind of more supportive about even extreme music.
Wow.
Like I remember, I think it's Ulver at some point were getting government grants to make music.
Wow.
So wow. I think there's a big part of that where it was like, even if it was extreme music, they were getting some forms of support from the government and the community and stuff. It wasn't as maligned as it was at that point, maybe in the States and Canada.
Well, that's really cool. I didn't know that part, man. That's way cool. Well, I hope we see a lot more of you because you guys got some great music, and
thank you.
I'm glad that you give us your creativity because it is different, and I like different. I'm sick of listening
to different
same shit.
And if ever like you guys listen to it, if it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not. But don't come tell me it sounds like anything you've ever heard before. It'll at least be unique. If you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you will absolutely fucking hate it. And you'll go, who's the fucking dumbass that put all this shit together? It doesn't go together, but it'll be an experience. So just give it a try, man.
There it is. Well, thanks a lot, and thanks for being on the Adventures of Pipe Man.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipe Man on W4CY Radio.